Hey, welcome. The name of this clip is Why the Bible Doesn't Matter. Now let me start off by saying I admire people who have all the time to do all the fancy visuals, but I don't have the time or the skill or the interest. So visually this is going to be kind of boring. But I think you'll find the thoughts interesting. Okay, why doesn't the Bible matter? Because no one that I've ever known believes it, believes what it says. Now at this point, you might want to stop listening. You might know someone who believes what the Bible says. You might yourself be someone who believes what the Bible says. Well, you're wrong. You think you believe what the Bible says, but you don't. Because you've been taught to believe what your pastor, priest, pope says the Bible says. Now with me it started, I was in maybe third grade and I'm in Catholic school. And the nun is telling us the Genesis story. And she begins by saying, and God said, on that very day you eat of the fruit, you will surely die. But then she was quick to say, but God doesn't mean regular death. He means spiritually dead. Right then and there it seemed a little funny, but okay, let's keep going. Later on, a snake tempts Eve. And the nun said, well, that's Satan. Do you see what's happening? If you take out a Bible and hold it in your hand, or electronically you go on the internet, and you go to Genesis, assuming you're reading an English version, you will see the word S-N-A-K-E. But you were taught that that's Satan, and you accept that. You accept that because that's what your preacher, pastor, priest, whoever says. Now later on in the New Testament, Jesus says at one point, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. Anything else than that comes from the evil one. In other words, don't take oaths. How many times on TV have you seen, at least I have seen the scene where someone is in court, they're asked to put their hand on the Bible, and they're asked, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? In other words, they're asked to take an oath while putting their hand on a Bible, where Jesus himself says don't take oaths. But it's okay because their pastor, I'll just use the word pastor from now on, tells them it's okay. Jesus at one point says, call no man father. And at another point, someone calls him holy, and he says, call no one holy, only God is holy. So those wild and crazy, those wild and crazy Catholics that I grew up with call the Pope Holy Father. All right. Now, you don't follow the Bible. You don't follow what the Bible says. No one I've ever met does. And that's a good thing because the Bible has some horrible, horrible stuff. I don't want you to stop following your pastor and follow the Bible. Now, you might stop following your pastor and think for yourself, but that's up to you. But for instance, the Bible says that a child who curses a parent must be put to death. It says it very plainly in the Old Testament. You might say, well, Jesus brought us a new law. No, in the New Testament, Jesus specifically cites that Old Testament verse with approval. He says, as God says in the Old Testament, honor your father and your mother, and the child who curses parent must be put to death. He specifically endorses that rule. I would not want anyone to follow what the Bible says and stone their unruly child to death. I would not want that to happen. It is better that you follow your pastor. So what pastors do is they pick out a few nice verses and then they often give you good advice about how to live your life. They tell you to be a good father, a good mother, a good child. They tell you to forgive. I mean, they tell you a lot of good things, and it's good that you follow them sometimes. Other times they tell you not so good things. But I just want you to realize that you and no one that you know probably follows the Bible. And if they do, they're dangerous. If they are going to kill their son or daughter, if the son or daughter curses them, they are dangerous. So that's my point. Keep following your pastor. Keep letting your pastor tell you what the Bible says, if you want. or wake up and realize that's what's happening. It's kind of like a bait and switch. They talk about this wonderful super duper book that God wrote. This is God's holy super duper book. So naturally, this book has a lot of authority. But then they steal that authority. They say, well, they don't say it, but in effect, what you're taught is this holy super duper book is not something that you can read and understand for yourself. You have to listen to what the preacher tells you the book says. Even when you're staring at the word snake, the preacher tells you it's Satan. And you have to believe that. No one I know, no one I've ever met, and no one I ever expect to meet follows the Bible. Follows what the Bible says. And that's a good thing. They follow their preacher, what the preacher says. That's sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. I think it would be a better thing if they thought for themselves, but maybe not. Maybe people who have not seen through this, who are gullible enough to just take their preacher at his word, maybe it's best that they follow someone more educated and thoughtful than themselves. Maybe it's a good thing. But the idea that people follow the Bible is just ridiculous. It's obviously not true. Okay, thanks for listening.